Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today's Product Council. Today, we're focusing on how you upgrade a Mojaloop deployment. If you've upgraded to Mojaloop 16 or 17.0 and you want to upgrade to 17.1 or the upcoming 17.2, what's the process, how difficult it is, and why should you do it at all? Um, Sam Kummary, our technical director, is going to lead on this. So, because Sam, of course, is in charge of assembling Mojaloop releases and maintaining platform quality and security, and he's the ideal person to talk about how you upgrade, how you migrate your data, etc., all of the issues around this. So, Sam, I'll just pass directly over to you, if I may.
Thank you, Paul. Hello, everyone. Thanks for the introduction, Paul. So I'm the technical director at Mojaloop Foundation. And as we were discussing the various aspects of upgrades, there is one session which I'm looking forward to as well at the upcoming MojoCon 30 event where we'll discuss upgrading Mojaloop. I think the title needs to be confirmed that James is running. Where we'll have a more extensive discussion. But we thought we'll take advantage of this session to initiate that discussion about Mojaloop releases, upgrades, focus on the technical side of it, on the commands that we use, and some focus on the strategies and how it can be done, while covering the others in a high level of detail. So let me share my screen quickly. If you can confirm when you can see it.
Yep, there it is. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. So today I'd like to see briefly, without going into too much detail on why upgrade and then what upgrading does involve in this case. Some discussion around that, around what are the various ways that it can be done. And towards the end, we'll open it up for discussion to take any questions from the audience or answer any questions there. So we look at why upgrade in general. Obviously, software upgrades are a part of the software development or operational life cycle of software adoption. But in specific to Mojaloop, wanted to add a few points here. Um, Even more than new features and functionality for a platform or software like such as Mojaloop, we believe that the quality and security improvements top the list of why we should do it. Um, the reason being that for OSS, the vulnerabilities, because all the repositories that we use, as you know, are all public. So any vulnerabilities that are identified are public. And more important than that, the libraries that we use, the other packages, npm libraries, for example, tools that we use from open source, the vulnerabilities that they may have are publicly known as well. So when a new release of Mojaloop comes out, we ensure that any medium high critical vulnerabilities are all addressed, the patches taken in before that version is released to the public as an official release. So that's one of the main reasons. And in addition, the code base is out there in public for everyone to see. It has, I think, both sides. One where we are so critical in that any vulnerability that's identified is usually addressed by a community member or anyone who comes across it. But also it's available to see for anyone as well. Usually there are various measures in place, but we don't control the dependencies that we use. For example, if there are any NPM libraries that we use internally, we don't control that code base. It is possible for us to raise pull requests, but usually we take the patches and these are included in our latest releases. So that's a good argument in support of that. And of course, recently we've done enhancements such as software bill of materials, upgraded our database client, MySQL client, to support TLS as well, encryption. And of course, there are new features and functionality. If you take the example of Mojaloop version 16 and Mojaloop version 17, there's a huge a leap in the set of features that are supported in terms of FX. There is ISO 222 messaging support, interscheme support, along with many others as well. not to go into the details of the features as such, but to show that to take advantage of these new features, new use case support, upgrades are necessary as well. And of course, as usual, performance improvements, especially when there are active work streams working on performance. Recently, we had a work stream called Performance White Paper, where we're trying to profile and offer guidance regarding resource footprint, patterns, scaling levels about Mojaloop. So during those cycles, we have performance improvements as well, not just by the work streams, but also by system integrators and adopters who have taken Mojaloop and made changes themselves or are contributing those upstream as well. And of course, there are some we cannot get away from. For example, if you take Mojaloop 17.10, uh, prior to 17.10 release, we were using Node.js version 20, which was going out of long-term support. Um, and the focus is not on node upgrade as such, but to talk about this general principle where the tooling that we use, like Node.js or others, might be going out of their own support lifecycle. So we'll have to upgrade those versions, which will include testing and the whole release cycle as well. So that will definitely be needed. And more recently, there was impact from a company called Bitnami, not a company, but a registry, a Bitnami registry, which we use for our Helm charts and images, which made a change to move to a more subscription model where the current images are moved into a directory called legacy, and the actual standard URLs are being used for hardened images that are offered as a paid service. So these are some of the things we don't control. So that makes it even more compelling to make sure that we're always um, in sync with the Mojaloop latest releases. And of course, if for example, if you take the example of Mojaloop version 15 and 17, um, upgrading from 15 to 17 would be even more difficult, I think, needless to say, while compared to upgrading from version 15 to 16 and then 16 to 17. So I think we've painted a picture here of why upgrade, but wanted to go through briefly. I didn't want to focus on the upcoming 3 slides, but these are provided as reference. I think Paul will share this deck after this session is done, but you can take a look at the release cycle, various iterations that happen. And for reference, I've also provided this roadmap as well, where you can see the timelines of module releases from 15.10 to 17. And this is the most recent one as well, including the 3 releases. We have 17.10 and version 17.20 is the one which we're going to release this week. It has a good argument as well as to why we need to make this release and what is coming in it. We have performance improvements, code quality and security improvements we talked about, deployment improvements, uh, enhancements and new features added in our some of our overlay services such as merchant services. There are fixes. The issue I talked about Bitnami. We have a fix for that, fix for fixes in the FX feature, interscheme improvements that are coming up as well. And we have features lined up even for the next release, potentially a 17.30 or a version 18. So this gives an overview of that roadmap. Uh, Please feel free to interrupt me. So what we are going to do today is go through a demo. So we have an about 8-minute demo of how to actually technically the commands that are involved and how do we do the demo in a Helm deployment, which can be extended to other forms of deployments as well, we believe. Uh, Coming to the strategies, let me go back to show one page from our documentation. Paul, can you please confirm you can hear me okay?
Yes, can hear you fine, son.
Thank you.
Yes.
So in the docs.mojaloop.io, there is a upgrade strategy guide in the technical. So if you go to docs.mojaloop.io, technical, there's a deployment guide, and then there is an upgrade strategy guide as well. And here, various scenarios are discussed. For non-breaking releases, it's straightforward. And how do we handle it for breaking releases? But the one I wanted to highlight here is this also talks about a canary style deployment strategy. So depending on the operational capabilities, scheme choices, and the team that is running the Mojaloop switch can choose the deployment strategy here, whether you want it to be a canary style or a blue-green deployment or in-place upgrade as well, where you can announce a downtime, take backup, upgrade, and then go back live as well. I think canary style is considered most risk averse or risk efficient, but it's up to the adopter to choose based on their own constraints and circumstances as well. So in the canary style, going back to that, you can see in that guide where we have the same backend for these two. Let's say we have a V16 deployment and a V17 deployment. So the V16 development is the deployment that's currently running. And after testing, taking a backup. Yeah, the best practice always involve taking a backup of the database. So the Mojaloop version 17 is deployed, and then slowly, initially a low percentage, like a 1 to 5% of the traffic is directed to the new deployment version 17. And then based on the monitoring and observations that are done on the new deployment, if everything looks good, then the whole traffic is moved on there gradually. But if there is an issue, a rollback can be performed as well. Custom migration scripts.
Hello? Hello? Is that you, Aditya? Okay. Carry on.
Yeah. Let me go.
Carry on,
Yeah,
son.
please. Thank you, Paul. And yeah, in the blue-green upgrade, we have the current deployment, and then we deploy a new full set of production quality deployment with Mojaloop version 17. Once it is tested and deemed ready, the decision is made to move over all of the traffic to the new deployment as well. So that's usually there's a bit of risk involved because you're moving the whole traffic. But yeah, again, these decisions have to be taken by the team who is operating the switch in that particular scheme. And as we are discussing, we are at a time where we have the Mojaloop evolution workstream working on a Tiger Beetle based ledger implementation for Mojaloop, and a future version in the foreseeable future, which will come up, a Mojaloop version which will have Tiger Beetle as a ledger database as well. So it's a good time to think about how to migrate to that version of Mojaloop. What are the various mechanisms needed? How do we deploy? How do we develop the migration scripts necessary on the adoption side? On the implementation side, of course, we want to work on how do we make this as seamless as possible? How do we make this less disruptive or as streamlined as possible? And these are some of the considerations to be taken while upgrading. I don't know if Michael, if you want to add anything regarding the Tiger Beetle upgrade or any other member here.
Well, not at the moment, but I think I will want to come back when we've finished the demonstration.
Okay, great.
Start talking about the various contexts in which people might want to perform upgrades.
Thank you, Michael. So for the sake of today's demo, I'll jump right to that. And towards the end, we can have time for more questions and answers. So we have a cluster that we have on AWS. We use a Helm deploy. And of course, we use the testing toolkit for validation at various points. So even before I open it up for any questions, let me go ahead to the demonstration and then come back if there are any questions in the demo. So the script for the demo is like this, where we initially deploy Mojaloop version 16. Let's say you're already on Mojaloop 16, you'll be able to identify this. So we have a Mojaloop version 16. For that, we first deploy the Mojaloop backend dependencies, MySQL, Kafka, MongoDB, the usual, and then deploy Mojaloop version 16 on top of it. We run the Mojaloop golden path test collection to validate this. And then for Mojaloop version 17, we first upgrade the backend dependencies to version 17, just the dependency version without changing the internals of it, such as the schema. And then we upgrade the services to Mojaloop version 17, which will also involve first the migration scripts running to upgrade the schema as needed. And we validate it using the TTK again to run the Mojaloop golden path collection. So let me reshare my screen, go back to a video. Give me one moment. Okay, so sharing my screen. Paul, I'll rely on you to confirm that you can see and hear.
I can see your screen, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so here I'm going to install the Mojaloop version 16 backend with persistence enabled. So I'm using this custom Helm values file. Let me just show you quickly that I have the MySQL persistence enabled. And here we are just deploying the example Mojaloop backend. So this is going to install the backend dependencies like MySQL, Kafka, Redis, etc. And this is the version that is going to be installed. And I'm using the Mojaloop test environment, AWS test environment, and the namespace is Moja1. So let's run this command and wait for all the pods to come up. Yeah, it is going to take a few minutes. Sure. Okay, so all the parts have come up for the backend dependencies, as you can see here. We have the MySQL, Kafka, Redis, as well as MongoDB. So the next thing I'm going to do is to deploy the Mojaloop version 16. So this is the command. Yeah, so we are using the same namespace, Moja1. This is the standard Mojaloop chart version 16.0.0. And this is the custom Helm values file that I'm using. We don't need to go into the details of this file now because it's just a standard configuration of the Mojaloop. So let me run this command. And this also is going to take a few minutes to come up. Yeah, once the deployment works, that you should be able to see the parts running here. Okay, so now our Mojaloop version 16 is deployed and all parts are running. So I'm going to go ahead and run the golden path test on this. So just to make sure that everything is working fine. So I'm going to run the command. Yeah, so the golden path test, they take 5 to 7 minutes to run. So we'll just wait for this to finish and then we'll move on to deployment of or upgrade of Mojaloop from version 16 to 17.
So just for this demo, we kind of developed a special script which accelerates the testing and deployment process. Instead of yeah, so that is the pause recording and the resume recording. Not exactly a script as such, but yeah. Anyway, so let me pause there. So what we've done till now is we finished the first half of our demo where we have version 16 deployed and validated. Any questions on that so far? Okay, if not, we'll now go with the next part as well. So let me continue now with the second part. So far, we've deployed and validated version 16. I was actually pleasantly surprised to see no issues with version 16. So now we'll continue.
The golden path tests are passing. So let's move on to the next step, which is upgrading the backend dependencies to v17. So I have the command here. So we are going to run the Helm upgrade command, and we are going to upgrade the release backend using the backend chart, and we specify the version here, which is 17.0.0, and the Helm values file. So I just run the command. It's going to take a few minutes. So I just wanted to mention that when we update the backend dependencies, it is going to update the versions of the backend components like Kafka, MySQL, Redis, etc. It is not going to make the database structure changes. That will happen when we run the migrations, and that is part of the core Mojaloop services. So for now, let's update the backend dependencies, and then we can check the next step. Okay, so the upgrade of the backend dependencies is complete, and we can see the new services which were part of the v17. They are running now. Now the next step is to upgrade the core Mojaloop services, and that is going to also make the database changes. So I'm going to run this command, Helm upgrade command. This is the release name. This is the chart and the version v17. And I have the corresponding values file here. So let me run this command. This will also take a few minutes, and then we can check again. All right, so the upgrade of the core services is also complete, and you can see all the parts. They're running fine now. Yeah, okay, so we can just verify that everything is running fine using the Helm test command. This will run the golden path test. So I'm going to run this test, and then we'll check the results. Okay, so our golden path tests have completed successfully. You can see here. So everything is running fine in, after an upgrade of Mojaloop from v16 to v17. There are a couple of things that we need to keep in mind while we upgrade. So sometimes the upgrade of backend. So there are these two MongoDB deployments that we have. So sometimes they have problem in assigning the persistent volume. So in that case, you can just restart these parts, and that they will work on its own. And one more thing with v17 is the TTK backend uses init container and init container for Mongo. So that one is using the Bitnami Helm Bitnami Docker image, and that Bitnami Docker image has been deprecated. So we need to change it to Vietnamese legacy. So you need to go to the stateful set and you need to edit the image. Yeah, when we deploy with the V17, you will see here there will be Bitnami and then MongoDB. So you just have to update it to Bitnami legacy. And then the pod will come up. Yeah, so this is the way to upgrade the Mojaloop using the Helm update commands. Thank you.
Thank you, Shashi, for those videos and validating the upgrade. So we did have persistence enabled, and this same strategy can be used by different operational teams to follow a canary style or blue green or an in-place upgrade based on the strategy you choose. But we can see that there's no issue with easily upgrading from 16 to 17. So to recap, we saw just an install or upgrade of the backend dependencies, then of Mojaloop itself, and the final step to validate based on its version. So that's all I had on the demo side. So this is an open discussion I wanted to raise here about managing custom components. So we know that Mojaloop most likely will not be deployed as is, as in like you might add custom components for doing, let's say, alerts or on the business side, various things. So want to open up the discussion here. If there are any best practices or any concerns regarding managing custom components, we always advocate that during the design itself, as you're taking Mojaloop, during the design of custom component itself, you take into consideration how to make upgrades easier as you adopt Mojaloop and upgrade in the future as well. And then also look at following those for tools and overlays. I think we have a hand up. James, yeah, go ahead.
Well, thanks, Sam. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if you could clarify for the people on the call who aren't aware what the differences between having persistence enabled and persistence disabled means in the Helm chart config.
Sure. So actually, I think in our video, we covered that as well, like towards the.
Oh, my apologies if I missed that.
Oh, no. So there was one aspect we covered, but essentially what persistence enabled is we have persistent data stores. They can be sometimes externally configured or internal, but we are not destroying and recreating anything. It's just the same data store. Sometimes the schema might involve migration because of the version upgrade. We are introducing a new row or changing something, altering something. But the data store itself is structurally the same. The schema might slightly change based on whether it's a breaking change and the migration scripts that are involved. But there is no change to the data store structure or integrity as such with the persistent data store. Whereas if it is not persistent, then typically we only use it for like dev QA testing purposes. But for any production, I can only see a database that is persistent as well.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I just wanted to make sure that it was clear in people's minds that the data that's in the platform when you run the upgrade isn't lost at all. It's carried over into the new version.
Correct. Yeah. And the other thing is we also want to like during the upgrade, sometimes when rollback is needed, actually I didn't have it written here, but we want to, let's say it's a blue-green strategy or a canary style. If a rollback is needed, for example, when version 17 is deployed alongside the version 16, and if rollback is needed, uh, the data store might need some additional scripts where the new transfers or the new details that are coming using the upgraded version will need to be rolled back. That will need a custom migration script. But otherwise, it won't change anything because it's especially in the canary style because the backend is the same, so it won't need any changes as such. But rollback should be fairly straightforward as well, as long as the rollback migration is done correctly. Michael.
Sorry, I just wanted to pick that point up and say, where do we expect those migration scripts to come from?
So currently, we have a migration script that runs just before Mojaloop runs. It's part of the central ledger database, which has all the migration scripts. And let's say in the deployment we just saw, we first deploy the backend services, and then just before we deployed the Mojo services, it's kind of like a prerequisite where the migration scripts run first, and only when that succeeds, the rest of the Mojaloop services are deployed for the new version.
Okay, so the answer is that we would expect, in situations where there are changes to the persistent storage structures, we would expect the Mojaloop Foundation to be providing an upgrade script so that people could move their storage from the old schema to the new schema, let's say, as part of the upgrade.
That is correct, Michael. And if there are not too many changes, so I want to add that I want to add a more like good sounding statement. But before that, I want to caveat it with saying that the migration script can be disabled. For example, if a particular scheme wants to do their own migration, they can use custom scripts to do the migration and then deploy Mojo on top of that. But let's say they want to go with the default Mojaloop. It's possible to not even realize that the migration is happening because it's taken care of by the default Helm upgrade command by Mojaloop. So the migration script runs seamlessly and then Mojo is deployed.
Thanks.
And Michael, while you're at it, you want to share anything about upgrade or looking forward to the Tiger build version and migration related things that we need to keep in mind?
Well, I think, yes. So the situation at the moment is that we are expecting two things to happen in the relatively near future that will affect existing persistent storage. The first of those is, as you say, the move from MySQL to Tiger Beetle as the vehicle for the storage of the ledgers, though not for the rest. All of the metadata will continue to be hosted in MySQL as it is. And the second is the movement from the existing ledger structure to the new Mojaloop accounting model, which will make a further significant difference to the way in which the central ledger persistent storage is constructed. So both of those will make quite a substantial difference to the way in which storage is structured for Mojaloop.
Yep. And I think we need to design the migration and rollback strategies for this as we look to that release as well. Nathan.
Well, I have a question regarding the historical data after the upgrade. Let's say someone have the version 16 and used it for maybe a year and then upgrades to the 17. Should we expect some changes, some impact on the reportings? And even in the finance portal, we have some data, or maybe the data they are extracting. Are the old and the new data consistent between each others?
It's a good point. I think that falls into the second point, Nathan, where the overlays that we design need to be developed in a way that there is no disruption there. But usually what we see is that our migration is quite seamless. We are not disrupting anything related to data, but making some changes in some cases. Recently, we've seen FX being introduced, so there was a significant change. but our changes usually are not that significant. Most of them are non-breaking. Only a few, such as a new feature being introduced and that having an impact where a required element has to be stored, or a non-optional element like a new non-optional element having to be updated or altered. Those are the kinds of things where changes happen, and it could have an impact on the overlay services, especially if they are depending on the older model. So along with the upgrade, we need to ensure that the reporting related queries are updated as well.
Could I just pick up those points a little bit, Sam?
Yeah, Mike.
And say that certainly, for instance, if people switch over from using MySQL to Tiger Beetle, then one of the things that I think will need to happen is that they will need to have either Tiger Beetle versions of their ledgers from ground zero, or they will need to have some way of, for instance, just cutting across to a new balance in the Tiger Beetle ledger, and from a reporting perspective, have some way of merging transfers that took place in the MySQL world and transfers that took place in the Tiger Beetle world. So that will be something, and I want to say part of this discussion is to try and start including people who are actually working with production Mojaloops at the moment, to make sure that we get their input and find out what the best thing for them would be. The other point that I would like to raise that we haven't raised yet, but is something that, again, we're going to need to do something about in the future, I think, is that, as you know, we now have an ISO 20022 version of Mojaloop. And as far as we're aware, that's successfully gone. And we are currently implementing, I think, 2 production versions of Mojaloop which use ISO 20022. Now, an unremarked consequence of that is the question of how the metadata relating to transfers will be stored. Now, the ISO 20022 messages store a great deal more information, or are capable of storing, I should say, a great deal more information than are the FSP IOP messages that everybody is used to. At the moment, what we're doing is essentially creating an FSP IOP version of the message and storing that in the existing persistent storage, in the MySQL storage. We will need to confront at some point the question that says, well, if participants are putting more information into these ISO 20022 messages than is capable of being stored in the FSP IOP messages, at some point we will probably want to store that, because if participants are making decisions about payments based on that information, we will need to make sure that we have copies of that information and that people can effectively report on it. Now, we have a work stream starting up that says, what are we going to do about reporting in the new world? Because we need to do that for Tiger Beetle, as I just said, but we also need to do it for ISO 20022. And I would be quite surprised if we don't see most Mojaloop implementations in the future being based on ISO 20022 rather than FSP IOP. So that's another issue where we will need to start thinking, when we upgrade the storage to allow pardon me, to allow ISO 20022 information to be stored rather than FSP IOP information, what should happen to existing information about transfers?
Yeah, we need to design for that, but it's a good point, Michael. I don't want to give a simple answer to that, but our migration scripts should take care of that.
No, I understand that, Sam, but as I say, this is going back to the point. People on this call who are working on implementations, either as systems integrators or as operators or whatever, I think I want to say, we want to make sure that we make your lives as easy and effective as they possibly can. But in order to do that, we need your input so that we can understand what our upgrade policy ought to look like in order both to provide people need, well, in fact, we think it because they tell us they need it, and second, to minimize the difficulties for people in upgrading between versions of Mojaloop.
Yeah, welcome feedback and input there, definitely. Thank you, Michael. Paul, James, is there anything you'd like to add or go into detail on? If not, we can take any questions from the audience as well.
Nothing beyond.
Thank you, James.
I think I probably need to talk to people about work streams at the end, but I'll leave that to the very end. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, Paul. If not, any other questions? Anyone else have any questions or anything you want to see elaborated?
I'm trying to find the hand up, but I also think that just speaking is the hand up
Just
button.
talk.
Hi, everyone. This is Lewis here from Tiger
Hi,
Beetle.
Lewis.
Yeah, I'm curious just to know out of the kind of the breadth of the deployments we have, how many people are running the MySQL databases or any other persistent data stores within Kubernetes versus outside of Kubernetes. Does anyone know or can speak to that in the room?
I have some anecdotal information on that.
Yeah.
Some folks are running separate storage clusters. So the database pods for MySQL and Kafka, Kafka brokers. Some folks have separated those into a different cluster, and in fact, there's a branch open on the IAC repos at the moment that allows you to have a separate Kubernetes cluster just for your persistent storage to keep the switch services separate. I'm not aware of anybody actually running the database pods, the MySQL stuff outside of a Kubernetes cluster at the moment in a kind of more, I'm going to say old-fashioned, but let's not call it old-fashioned. Let's call it conservative, in a more conservative way, kind of traditional running your DB on bare metal stuff. I'm not aware of anybody in the community that's doing that right now.
And we have at least one adopter running a managed service as well.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
For MySQL, yeah, managed MySQL in cloud. Yeah.
Oh, and that's actually production.
Yes, both of those examples are in production currently. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you.
Was there a bigger point you wanted to make, Lewis?
Oh no, I'm sorry. Yeah, I probably should have stated that. No, I'm just curious. So part of it being that we at Tiger Beetle don't recommend people use Kubernetes to deploy Tiger Beetle. They're mainly for a safety perspective. You know, it's quite easy for someone to apply the wrong YAML file and then delete their production database. I know that there's ways to stop that from happening in Kubernetes, but that kind of keeps me up at night a little bit thinking about. Also, it adds a layer of misdirection between the actual instances of the data files of the database, which should be treated with extreme care. It adds an extra kind of layer between what's actually sitting on the disk and then what's managed in Kubernetes. So, but yeah, I'm just curious to as we think about making this deployment available with Tiger Beetle and helping people, putting into people's hands how we go about that in the safest possible way.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Lewis. Obviously, any operation which could potentially damage data and production environment needs to be run behind some very strict business processes.
Yeah.
Typical process would be a driver and a passenger, or a navigator and an observer. Two folks sitting in front of the same screen, double checking each other before they press the relevant buttons. Also, Sam mentioned taking backups before doing anything that's potentially destructive. That would typically be part of a run book for doing this upgrade. But also making sure that you have good solid replication as well. Replicating your transaction logs. MySQL supports that kind of log shipping replication. All of that good stuff should be enabled before you do this kind of operation as well.
Yeah, I remember, but some times ago we used to run the upgrade on test environment, play with it intensively to see if there's any breaking points before upgrading the prod. So yeah, that also helps.
Yeah, 100%, Manzi. Yeah, doing a test deployment on a staging or test environment first to test your upgrade process, but also to test those database migrations. There are many people in the community who have experience of making schema changes to very large, very busy transactional databases that will tell you plenty of horror stories about things that can go badly wrong. Blocking transactions for several hours while a schema change is happening. That's not the sort of thing you want to be having to deal with. Making sure that those database migrations are smooth and trouble-free is not a trivial problem for a big, busy financial services platform with large volumes of data, existing data in a database, and very busy transaction flows coming in the front end. It's not a trivial problem, for sure.
Thank you, Manzi, James, Lewis. Yeah, we want to take a simplistic approach as we kickstart this discussion, but I think this is something that will be an ongoing discussion, especially as we are coming across, as we are looking forward to some of the changes coming in this year. But yeah, hopefully we'll have another fruitful discussion at the MojoCom event as well, and even after that, and I will make these upgrades as seamless and smooth as possible. With that, I can, if there are no other questions, Paul, can I pass it on to you?
Thanks, Sam. Yeah, that was a very useful session. Thank you. And as Sam said at the start, he and James will be diving into this whole subject in more depth at MojoCom 13 in Kigali. And I'd encourage you all to attend that. And he'll definitely work with you one-to-one and addressing your questions. So thank you, Sam. That's great. Before we close, I did want to make a couple of comments about work streams. You'll have heard Michael referring to the need for upgrades to, or even creation of a new set of reporting tools, and that's particularly the requirement because of the move to Tiger Beetle. But more generally, there's a move to revamp our approach to reporting. That work stream at the moment is almost a sub-work stream of the Mojaloop evolution work stream, which is focused on Tiger Beetle, but all of the things around it. So it hasn't really kicked off as a separate work stream yet. But if you're interested, then please let me or Michael know, and we'll let you know how to join. A couple of others that I want to raise with people. One is forensic audit. This is something that came up as a requirement repeatedly over the last few months. As people are moving to production grade real life deployments, then they come to understand that they really need a forensic audit capability to comply with requirements from regulators. At the moment, we have an audit capability, but it's not forensic standard. James has agreed to lead this work stream. He's going to set up that work stream, set up calls, etc. So if anyone here is interested in helping implement the forensic audit capability, then please let myself or James know. Another work stream that is likely to pop up reasonably soon is logging. Paul Baker from Infotex raised the fact that in their production environments, the standard of logging across all of the various modules that make up Mojaloop is inconsistent and in some cases unhelpful. And he and his team have developed a draft standard for how logging should be implemented. And there is obviously going to be an effort in the coming months to standardize logging across all of Mojaloop's modules. That's a not insignificant piece of work. Again, if anyone is interested in leading a work stream or contributing to a work stream there, then I would please ask you to get in touch with myself or Paul Baker. Paul is on this call. I don't know if you want to say any words on that, Paul.
Yes. Maybe just to support what you're saying, I think no one likes to put time and effort behind logging, but if you don't have the right logs at the right frequency according to your scoped environment, then you get lost and you spend too much time looking at logs you don't need and not enough time seeing the logs you want. And the result is an environment that is very difficult to support. What we are trying to do is fix that to make sure that you get exactly the right level of logging visibility for the environment that you are currently running or expect to see. And I think that'll have a profound impact on the supportability of a commercial switch. So we do see this as being strategically very important to get done. So thanks for the support.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, this is another aspect of people gaining real world experience of live production deployments. Suddenly logging becomes a bit of a priority. So thank you for that, Paul. The final work stream I wanted to highlight was my oft repeated call for someone to lead the PISP 2.0 work stream. Despite everyone telling me how important this is, I still haven't found anyone to actually lead this work stream. And I guess that's because no adopters as yet see this as something which is going to significantly affect their service or their profitability. So I hope that some adopter somewhere will start to see this as something they really want to push forward on. I regularly get comments from people who want to contribute to this. So there's no shortage of engineering effort, but we do need a workstream lead to drive it forward. So again, reach out to me if you're willing to contribute to that. That's all I wanted to say today. I think it's just left to say thank you to Sam for leading on this discussion today on upgrade strategies. And don't forget, if you're at MojaCon 30, to go along to the workshop session with Sam and James. And also to thank Michael for contributing on the Tiger Beetle aspects. And thanks to Lewis for chipping in as well. So thank you, everyone. And I will share the recording later today.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you so
Goodbye.
much. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Very much. Bye.